Hello all, welcome to the Mughals to Mahatma series of Convert IAS. The theme that we are going to discuss in this video is the rise of regional states. So it's a continuous process that we are taking off from the Mughal decline. Now if you see the flowchart here, see the year 1707, it's a landmark year, and see the century which is 18th century. Now 18th century is a much discussed century in the history of India. Why? Because it marks a break in history. If you take the history of medieval India, starting from the 12th century, you can see a centralized polity, which is the Delhi Sultanate. Then in 1526, Babur comes to India. Again, the centralized polity system continues. In case of Delhi Sultanate, what they did was Iqtidari system. That means the land was divided in the form of Iqtas. Then when Mughal came, they divided it in the form of Jagirdari system, which is Jagirs. Land was divided in the form of Jagirs. So the same kind of polity continues, but this disintegrates in 18th century. That is why we say 18th century is a year that marks break in history. And it all begins at 1707 with the death of Aurangzeb. Now after Aurangzeb dies, there is a series of Mughals till 1857. This is when the last Mughal emperor comes. His name is Bahadur Shah Safar. Then first you have Bahadur Shah I, he's the son of Aurangzeb. Then you have Jahandar Shah, you have Farrukhsiyah, you have Muhammad Shah. But during this period, the polity is weak. These systems that I mentioned, the Jagirdari system, that collapses. Then there are regional powers. Now, regional powers, when we talk about regional powers, they are not of same nature. They comes with different natures. That is what we are going to see now. See, there are three kinds of regional states. We are dividing it into three based on their nature. For example, first one is successor state. Second is independent state. Third is rebel state. Now, rebel state is one thing that we are not going to discuss in this video because it has states like Marathas. It has entities like the Sikhs or the Jats. So I'll just tell you what rebel states are. Rebel state means these states will constantly be in quarrel with the Mughal Empire. Now we should understand that until 1857, Red Fort was the center of Mughal Empire. They were there, their power was shrinking and shrinking. So if they had control over this much area, it shrunk and shrunk and shrunk and it came down to the Red Fort at the end. So during this time, these people played a lot of role. The Sikhs, Marathas and Jats, they were constantly fighting with the Mughal power. And these states, some of them were established just to fight with the Mughal power. It is the resistance that it led to these states. So that is rebel states. We'll discuss them in detail in the coming sessions. In this video, we are going to discuss these two entities, successor states and independent states. Let's see what a successor state is. Now this term is very important, successor. Whom do they succeed? They succeed the Mughals. So every state has to be established by a person, correct? Every empire has to be established by a person. In case of Delhi Sultanate, it was Qutbuddin Aibak. In case of Mughal Empire, it was Babur. In case of the successor state, it was different people like Asaf Jah, Nizamul Mulk. But these people were former Mughal nobles or governors. Once they got a lot of power, when they see the Mughal Sultan was declining in power, they started establishing the independent states. But we call them successor states. That's the idea. Now, one more thing that marked these states is that they accepted the Mughal sovereignty. Even when they are independent, even when they had leverage, they accepted the Mughal sovereignty. For example, in 1717, Farrukhsiyah issues a farman. Farrukhsiyah is a Mughal emperor. He issues a farman to the British. Now, this farman gives the British a lot of rights, including something called the dastak. Now, dastak is the right to give trade passes. Now, British has the dastak and the region in which it operates is Bengal. So at that time in Bengal, what happens? There is a successor state that is already there. But this Sultan in Bengal, the Nawab in Bengal, he doesn't question this dastak or Farrukhsiyah's farman. And that is called acceptance of the Mughal sovereignty. I hope the concept is clear. That is what differentiates the successor state from other independent state or rebel state. Moving to the second entity, the independent state. We call them independent because they don't accept the Mughal sovereignty. Just inverse the concept. And the biggest example for this is Tipu Sultan. Now you know that Tipu Sultan ruled in the Mysore region in the peninsula. He had no relation with the Mughals. Whether the Mughals issue a farman or not, he doesn't care. Now that is an independent state. But these independent states comes up as separate and powerful entities when the Mughals lose their power. That's the relation. If they came up in any other time period, say before 15th century, then we don't call them in this category. They are a separate entity. But they comes due to the disintegration, but they don't accept the sovereignty. And typical example of this, you can always remember Tipu Sultan or Hyder Ali. And that's the independent state. Now, rebel state, I've already given you an idea. They constantly revolted against the Mughals. And sometimes it was set up against the Mughals themselves. The other states, one accepted, one didn't care, and one constantly rebelled. For example, the Sikh rebellions. Remember the case of Arjun Singh, the Sikh mills, and Aurangzeb and other rulers executing the Sikh gurus. All these is part of the rebellions that took place. Now, having seen the nature, let's look at the map once. See this. The Marathas, the biggest rebel state. The Mysore, independent state. Rajput is yet another independent state. Awadh, successor state. Bengal, successor state. Hyderabad, successor state. In Punjab, you have the Sikhs. Rebellion is going on. So this is the idea. This is the map of 1750. In 1757, the Battle of Plassey will take place. That's when the British will take control. But the British will start taking control from here. They already have a factory here. You know that the Carnatic wars are being fought in this time period, 1750s, here. So the British will start expanding. But this is the idea. Just have an idea of how it is. And the Mughals are reduced to the Red Fort. Mughals were an empire who had control over this entire region. But now they are reduced to this Red Fort. When in 1739, when Nadir Shah invades, he takes control of region in the northwestern side. Because he was the emperor of Persia. So that is also lost by the Mughals. Now this is the situation of India in 1750. It is in this context you have to see the rise of regional states. Now let's see the successor states one by one. Now these successor states are important because it is in the later stage that they come into conflict with the British. So that's why we have to understand them conceptually as well as chronologically. This name is something you have to remember. Murshid Quli Khan. He established the Bengal successor state in 1707. So this is 1 year and one person you have to remember. There is no much complication with respect to the constitution of Bengal state, whereas in case of Awadh and Hyderabad, there are some interesting stories. But here, we don't have anything like that. He established the state in 1717. It was one of the richest provinces. Then there are other people who follows him. Successors are there. Then one important name that you have to remember is Alivardi Khan. It's a strong noble, strong Nawab. Now, by this time, they have become independent Nawabs. Then this name, Surajud-Dawla. So this name we'll very often hear in the context of Battle of Plassey. This is the Sultan who had an issue with the British. Now, the issues that he had, we'll discuss towards the end of this discussion. But this is one name that you have to remember, and his reign was in around 1757. So Murshid Quli Khan, Alivardi Khan, Sirajud-Dawla, three names associated with the Bengal successor state, and the year 1717. This is the first successor state that is getting established. After Bengal comes Awadh and finally Hyderabad. So this chronology is very important and you have to remember that. Now let's go to Awadh. Now when we talk about Awadh, you should know two important entities called the Said brothers. So I've told you in 1707, Aurangzeb died. And after that, you have a series of weak Mughals. And during the period of weak Mughals, there are powerful nobles in Delhi. Now, some nobles, they will come out, they will form successor states, but there are still powerful nobles in Delhi. And one of the most powerful nobles were Said brothers. Now, what they did is, they killed one of the emperors called the Jahandar Shah. So after Aurangzeb came Bahadur Shah I. He is the son of Aurangzeb. Then his reign lasted only till 1712. He died. Then came Jahandar Shah. Jahandar Shah was commissioned to kill by the Said brothers. Then they installed someone called Farrukhsiyar. This Farrukhsiyar is the one who issued Farman to the British in 1717. But in 1719, Farrukhsiyar was blinded and killed by the Said brothers because they were so powerful. Once the emperor goes against them, they'll kill him. So this was the Said brothers. So somebody wanted to eliminate Said brothers. And one person, Muhammad Shah, conspired with Sadat Khan, also known as Burhanul Mulk, to kill the Said brothers, and they successfully killed the Said brothers in 1720. This Muhammad Shah, he becomes the emperor after Farrukhsiyar. He is the Mughal emperor after Farrukhsiyar. He rules for a long period because he was comparatively able. He rules for a long period till 1748, somewhere around there. All the battles where fought, Nadir Shah's invasion happens in his time period. Now this person, Sadat Khan, he helped Muhammad Shah, the emperor, to kill Said brothers. Since he helped, he rose in Mansab. So Mansab is the rank that is given to Mughal nobles. If you have a higher Mansab, that means you have a higher rank. And Mansab is a dual ranking system. I should make it clear to you. Mansab is a dual ranking system. It had two entities, Sat and Zawar. Sat means your position in the court. Sawar means the number of horsemen that you have to maintain. Sat and Sawar. So this was Mansab. So he rose in Mansab. More horsemen, more rank. But in 1722, he came into conflict with the emperor himself. Because this will constantly happen. This is politics. Once he came into conflict with the emperor, he was thrown out of the court. This was 1722. And he established the Awadh Empire, which is a successor state. So he, the Burhanul Mulk or Sadat Khan, is the first emperor or the founder of Awadh. In 1722. In 1717, Bengal is formed. In 1722, Awadh is formed. But you should remember that he was the emperor of Awadh in 1739. This is the year when the Persian emperor Nadir Shah invades. And Nadir Shah constantly forced him to give booty. Higher and higher share. And he couldn't withstand the pressure and he suicided. And he was succeeded by Safdar Jung. Is an important name, Safdar Jung. We'll come across the events in Awadh later. But this is the story of the establishment of Awadh. Now, once the story is known to you, you should remember the name and the time period. It comes after Bengal, and the founder is Sadat Khan. The year is 1722, and he died because of this. Moving to Hyderabad. Now, the Hyderabad or Deccan is always an ambition for people in Delhi. That means the Mughal Emperor. Aurangzeb had a long conquest of Deccan, which was unsuccessful. Now, this person, Zulfikar Khan, powerful noble, he also had a dream of having an independent state in Deccan. But he couldn't fulfill that. He died in 1713. So that ambition came to an end. And the Mughal emperor, during that time, he appointed a viceroy. His name was Mubarak Khan. Viceroy was appointed and Deccan was part of the Mughal territory. Then came someone else called Nizamul Mulk or Kilich Khan. This person had the same ambition. So he fought a battle with Mubarak Khan. He was the Mughal viceroy. Mughal viceroy didn't have any personal ambitions, but he was the viceroy. So the battle was fought in 1724. In fact, they fought a battle called Shakar Kheda. And in this battle, Battle of Shakar Kheda, Mubarak Khan was killed. And once Mubarak Khan was killed, he became the sole power center in Deccan, and he established the successor state of Hyderabad, which he called Asaf Jah House. He assumed the title of Asaf Jah. So when you talk about Asaf Jah, if you come across this term, remember that Asaf Jah can only be the Nawab of Hyderabad. You have Asaf Jah 1, Asaf Jah 2. So they're all Nawab of Hyderabad. This was established, the Asaf Jah House was established in 1722. Now just to recap the years, 1717, the Bengal successor state, 1722, Awadh successor state, and 1725, Hyderabad. Now, this is the story of successor states. These years are important and the names are also important. Now moving to the story of independent states. The first and foremost independent state, the Rajputs. Now see, Rajputs, they were a strong power when Delhi Sultanates or Mughals established their empire. So Akbar is one person who realized the importance of having allies in Rajputs. Remember the story of Jodha Akbar. Jodha Bai was a Mughal princess, Rajput princess. He was married to the Mughal court. This marriage alliances was part of having strong allies in Rajput. Remember the name Man Singh. Man Singh was he given a higher mansab. I already told you what is mansab. Man Singh was having one of the highest mansabs in Mughal court, and he fought the battles of Akbar for him because he was a strong ally. And Mughals also did something in favor for them, which is called the Watan Jagir. Watan Jagir means there are two type of Jagir. Jagir means land assignments. One is Watan Jagir and second is Tankwa Jagir. Now, Tankwa Jagir is given to officials as salary. Once the official dies, this Tankwa Jagir will be taken from him and it is given to someone else. Even when they leave, it can be transferred. But Watan Jagir is hereditary. So suppose I am a Rajput prince, I had my empire in Jaipur region, that region will be given as a Watan Jagir for me and I can give it to my son. So this is something that the Mughals did in favor of the Rajputs. So the point here is Rajputs were a strong ally of Mughals during the time of Akbar. But when Aurangzeb came, he reimposed the jizya. Now, jizya is religious tax, a tax that has to be paid by non-Muslims. Now, when you impose a tax like this, your relation with the Rajputs will get bad. So Rajputs will start to rebel. So this relation was compromised during the time of Aurangzeb itself. Once Aurangzeb died in 1707, the Rajputs started asserting their independence. And Bahadur Shah, the successor of Aurangzeb, had to march against Ajit Singh, which was saved with alliances, but Rajputs became an independent state after that. They were not accepting the sovereignty of Mughals. Now, what happens to the Rajputs after this, we'll discuss, but this is the context in which Rajputs becomes an independent state separate from the Mughals. Now, Mysore. You should know that the biggest empire in Mysore was Vijayanagara. They got declined in 1565 due to Talekota War. And then came the Wadayar dynasty. This Wadayar dynasty was, they were part of the Vijayanagara state. They just like how successors are following from Mughal Empire, they got independence from the Vijayanagara Empire. And they established their dynasty. This is the Mysore dynasty. But when we talk about Anglo-Mysore wars, we are talking about these two people, Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan. Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan, they were the commanders in the Wadayar army. And Hyder Ali established his empire, which is the separate empire, and they became a powerful empire. But once Tipu Sultan and Hyder Ali were defeated by the British, they reinstated the Wadayar dynasty as a puppet state. And they subsequently signed the subsidiary alliance with Lord Wellesley. So during this time, it is during the time of Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan, we talk about them as an independent state. We neither talk about Wadayar dynasty or Vijayanagara Empire. It is during this time we talk about them as independent state. And in 1798, 1799, when Tipu Sultan was killed, they became a puppet of the British Empire. Now Travancore, one more important dynasty. Now in the context of Travancore, the person you see in the picture here, his name is Martanda Varma. He established the dynasty of Travancore in 1736. So it is an independent state. They didn't accept the sovereignty of Mughals. There is one important event that you have to remember, which is in 1741. It is called the Battle of Colonial. Now this battle was not fought with any other prince or Nawab. It was fought with the Dutch. This is the only battle in which a European power was completely defeated in India. And they went back. Due to their defeat in Battle of Colonial, the Dutch lost their powers and they went back. They stopped their ambitions for India. So this is one important battle and one important date that you have to remember. So this state is also there as an independent state during the 1750s. So Rajputs, Travancore and Mysore. These three are the major independent states. We have already seen the successor states, Hyderabad, Awadh and Bengal. Now rebel states, I've told you, I'll explain in a different session. Now you have to see the nature of these independents and successor states. They had a common nature. First of all, they all were dependent on the local chieftains because they didn't have a centralized system. See, if you need a proper political system, you need a long period of time. For example, in the Mughal time, you had the Mir Bakshi, you have Subhas, you have local provinces. In Delhi Sultanate also, I've told you the same. I've told you about Ikta system and Jagir system. So these people didn't have all that. So they were dependent on the local power heads, local chieftains, except Mysore. So this is an exemption. So UPSC can ask a question in prelims giving statement like this. All the states were dependent, but all the states were not. Mysore was an exception. They didn't accept the local chieftains. And these states did not attempt to modernize their army as well. There also Mysore is an exemption. Mysore tried to modernize their army in the model of France, but the others didn't. What they did is they naturally accepted the British sovereignty in the form of subsidiary alliance. But Mysore didn't. Now, second, there is constant tussle between each other. Now, this is something that we always talk about when the context of British. When British came, what they saw is princes fighting against princes. And they started aligning with one. So in the last class, we talked about Dupleix. Dupleix was forming alliances with one Nawab against the other. He was using one princely state as a buffer against the British. All this is happening because these people were fighting against each other. So this was the nature of the successor and independent states. Plus there was a Jagirdari crisis. Now Jagirs, I have told you, these are revenue assignments of land given to nobles. Once you have more and more powerful nobles, you demand more and more from the land. What you demand from the land is called Jama. What is actually cultivated from the land is called Hasil. So you demand more, but the actual cultivation is less. So this mismatch will create something called the Jagirdari crisis. This is also part of all the successor and independent states. Now, this being the nature, let's see what happened to them after this. Take the case of Bengal. In 1757, the friction between British and the Nawab Sultan of Bengal started. British started constructing a fort on the banks of Hooghly. They wanted to mint coins. I already told you they had the Dastak right. Now all these things led to the Battle of Plassey in 1757, which the British won with the help of someone called Mir Jafar. He was the commander of the Bengal army. He conspired with the British. So without fighting the war, they won it. Then you know that when we talk about Governor General of Bengal, it all happens in the Bengal. It was the power center of British. In 1772, the Regulating Act will come. So everything is centered around Bengal. So this is what happened to the Bengal successor state. From 1567, they are starting to lose their power. In 1764, in the Battle of Buxar, it is complete. They give the Diwani and Nizamat right to the British. Now take the case of Awadh. In 1801, they sign a subsidiary alliance, but this is not a properly famed subsidiary alliance. This is the period of Wellesley. So with even after this alliance, it remains an independent state. But in 1856, it will get annexed during the time of Dalhousie for maladministration. And this Sultan, Wajid Ali Shah, who was there, he was very popular. So there was a revolt against the British because of this annexation. And this is something that leads to the revolt of 1857, because most of the soldiers or the sepoys who were in the revolt were from Awadh region. Then the revolt will break out. Then his wife, Wajid Ali Shah's wife, Begum Hasrat Mahal, will fight from Lucknow. And his son, Bajris Qadar, they both fight together. And Lucknow is the last place to fall during the 1857 revolt. So Awadh, this is the story of Awadh. By 1857 revolt, if everything is over, Awadh's power will come to an end. Now see regional kingdom, Hyderabad. They signed the subsidiary alliance in 1798. So they accept the sovereignty at the earliest. And they'll continue like that until 1948, when Operation Polo is initiated by the Indian government and it goes annexed to the Indian state. It was a police operation. So this is the story. They don't revolt against the British, they accept it, and which is part of the post-independence consolidation. In case of Travancore, they also accept the subsidiary alliance in 1795, one of the earliest. And they also continue it like this. But the Indian government does not annex them through an operation. There was a huge revolt in Travancore state against the Diwan, the minister, who decides to remain independent without joining the Indian Union. So there is a huge revolt, and the most notable among them is Punapra Vailar. It's a communist movement. So after this moment, the Diwan will get attacked, and the Diwan will flee out of Travancore, and Travancore becomes part of the Indian Union. And the state of Kerala will be formed after that, combining Travancore and Malabar. Malabar was part of the Mysore state of Tipu Sultan. So this is the story of Travancore. Then Rajputs. I've told you Rajputs started rebelling against Mughals since 1707. In 1739, Persian Sultan invades. So naturally, he will invade the Rajput region as well. Then Marathas will also invade the Rajputs because Marathas are known for their plundering nature. So this is how they gather wealth. Because of these two successive invasions, Rajput gets weakened. And therefore, they remains loyal to the British because of they had to face a lot of struggle from other enemies and they remain loyal to the British. During the 1857 revolt, Rajputs are one group that supported the British. Now that's the story. These successor independent states, you have to remember that they all sprouted up in after the death of Aurangzeb and they all came to an end either during the British time or during the post-independent consolidation phase. So that's the discussion. We'll come up with yet another theme in another video. Thank you for listening.